at BayhillNewsNetwork@gmail.com or call 1784-529-8340.
Great news! Spectra Plus is now rolling out internet and TV services in St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Yes, better service and better prices from the new and improved Spectra Plus. Spectra Plus TV plans for $59.99 per month, VAT included. Adult TV 3 channels plus $29.99. For more information, call 1784-534-2551 or 1784-532-2501. Fast, reliable broadband and television services for your home or business. Spectra Plus TV, internet, better.
Now with ice cold local juices to go with our rich and tasty authentic Vincentian meals made affordable, it's the award-winning Phoenix Kitchen, open 7 days with extended hours on Friday and Saturday. Juices include Marby, lemon lime, passion fruit, bell apple, golden apple, cherry, mango, Marby, linseed, carrot, beetroot, fruit punch, and sea moss. For further information, call 455-1280. That's right, a bigger meal awaits you now with fresh, cold local juices. Phoenix Kitchen. Let the phoenix arise in you.
Bay Hill News Network is an internet radio. We are affiliate with Fun City Radio USA, Cancardi Radio, and Success Radio Canada and Blaze Nation Media Group. You can find Bay Hill News Network at www.bayhillnews.net.
Ship your barrels and household effects to St. Vincent and the Grenadines with SVG Direct. Jumbo barrels, $70, medium, $60, and small, $50. We ship anything, name it, we ship it. Vehicles and more. Local agent, Adams Customs and Shipping Agency. 3rd floor, Baines Building, Kingstown, SVG. Telephone 1784-458-1328. In Canada, contact Michael 647-569-3285. Jambi 647-657-7362. Remember, it's free pickup at your convenience 7 days per week anywhere in the Greater Toronto area with SVG Direct. Looking for a place to relax with natural cool breeze and friendly surroundings? Then check the Bay Hill Tree Bar, located at Bay Hill K. At the Bay Hill Tree Bar.
Nice Radio's Kalulu presents Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative and yes, certainly controversial, socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio, first aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m. with repeat broadcasts on Sundays at 9 p.m. You can always catch us on the World Wide Web, www.niceradio.info, that's INFO. You also remember, we're on Facebook and YouTube. I am, of course, Keith Joseph. Today, dear friends, is Saturday. It is the 13th day of March, 2021. Welcome to another edition of your favorite program, Just Another Look. We want to begin this week's program, dear friends, by discussing the matter of fate, F-A-T-E, fate. And we want to say that fate is an incredible thing. Fate is an incredible thing, F-A-T-E. You know, some time ago, last year perhaps, the country learned that the Prime Minister's wife, Eloise, was experiencing some problems with her back, her spine. And people empathized with that. Because no one likes to or enjoys hearing about somebody else's illness. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter whether it is a wealthy person or a poor person. Whether it is a politician or a beggar. It doesn't matter. News about illness are not taken lightly. But because our society is class structured, because our society is status structured, when somebody who is relatively high profile gets sick and the rest of us learn about it, we empathize. Because many of us would have experienced illnesses ourselves or would have had people who got ill. And so many people have experience of having to deal with illness, either their own or people close to them or people they know. So the wife of the Prime Minister getting ill is as important to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines as the Prime Minister getting ill. That's how seriously people take the matter of illness. We tend to empathize with that. So when people learned that Eloise was not doing well, clearly people empathized. And so in this past week, the week now concluding, we learned that the Prime Minister has finally gotten an appointment in the United States. And he and his wife Eloise will be heading out on the 17th of March. Well, at least they got an opportunity. They will deal with that, the operation, get an appointment for the operation. And so they'll be heading out next week. And all of us in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because we are a Christian community, we empathize with the Prime Minister, his wife, and their children. And we pray that the operation is successful, and we wish them well. Some of you may remember, dear listeners, that some time ago, when Barbados had a Prime Minister, Thompson I think it was, who was out of the country for a while, and then people started to wonder, is something wrong with him? Is something wrong with him? And eventually, the Barbadian public says, what is wrong? Tell us, we need to know you. You're the leader of the government, and we need to know. And eventually he came and he told them that he had cancer. It proved terminal, but it was the people who demanded that they know what the situation. We haven't demanded it, but we've been told, and as the people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we empathize. And as a Christian community, we pray for Eloise. We pray for her family, that they may come through this with flying colors, that the operation may be successful. Eyewitness News told us the wife of the Prime Minister, quote, is scheduled to undergo spinal surgery later this month for a condition which the Prime Minister said last year could put her in a wheelchair. End of quote. Okay? And we are told again by Eyewitness News that the Prime Minister and Eloise will travel to the United States on Wednesday, 17th of March for the operation. Eyewitness News quotes the Prime Minister, saying, "And you know, last September I went to the USA with Eloise to do all the checkups and everything, and hoping that we would get the operation to her potentially serious problem relating to her spinal condition. But we have just been able to get recently the appointment date from the surgeon." End of quote. So all of St. Vincent and the Grenadines would wish them well and will continue to keep Eloise in our prayers. But we started this program and this segment by declaring that faith, F-A-T-E, is an amazing thing. Faith is an amazing thing. Because the Prime Minister is quite open with us in telling us that his wife is not well. He's quite open with us in telling us that she has a spinal condition. A condition which, if left unchecked, if not operated on, could very well lead to her spending the rest of her life in a wheelchair. Not a condition that you would wish on anyone. Not a condition you would wish on anyone. So he's been quite open with us in telling us that. But just another look in talking about faith, F-A-T-E, being an amazing thing, an incredible thing, wants to point out, I want to remind Vincentians that you remember the day in Parliament when Eustace, in protest, stayed silent and refused to take his seat. The Speaker of the House insisted that Eustace should take his seat. And in response, all of the members of the opposition in Parliament stood up and joined Eustace in a silent protest of not taking their seats. It was clearly within the remit of the Speaker of the House to determine the next course of action. And the course of action taken was to have the police come into Parliament and forcibly remove the members of the opposition who were not taking the orders of the Speaker, not following his instructions, and remove them from the Parliament. Remember that. You remember too that they were forcefully removed from Parliament. Prime Minister was there. The rest of the government, parliamentarians were there. And there were people in the gallery. And the police decided that they would forcefully remove the members of the opposition You remember that we did programs letting you know that in their forceful removal of members of the opposition from parliament, in the case of Daniel Cummins, they were banging the door on his feet. Banging the door. And people had to be saying, but you're mashing up the man's foot, you're going to mash up his foot. But as if that were not enough, they then held Cummins and flung him down the stairs of the parliament like a sack of potatoes. Like a sack of potatoes. Where was the Prime Minister? What did the Prime Minister do or say? Because all of us know that if he had called for a stay of execution or said to the members of the police, hold on a minute, we know that they would have stopped. Not a member of the government side said a word or did anything to stop the police from treating members of parliament in the manner in which they did. None of the ULP people who were among the visitors in the gallery had anything to say. When the information emerged and the public knew what happened, the minions were saying essentially that the NDP members of parliament overacted. That they didn't get the kind of treatment that people say that they want to say they got. That they were acting to give the impression that more was done to them than was actually done by the police on that day, that fateful day in Parliament. All because Eustace refused to take his seat initially and refused to say anything. They did not admit, the minions, nor the government side in Parliament, that our security forces held Daniel Cummins and swung him down the steps of our Parliament building. Many of the ULP minions laughed as he was flung down the steps. There was no gasping. There was no shouting, "Good God, what are you doing?" And the ministers of government, the Prime Minister sat there, said and did nothing to stop it. No one found the time. No one took the time. No one displayed any pang of conscience. No one on the government side, certainly not even the Speaker, showed or displayed any sort of conscience relative to the way in which the police acted. For their part, the police took full advantage of the opportunity afforded them under the law and showed their true colors. These are members of the opposition. You read about these things in countries run by brutish dictators. You don't read about those things in our type of society. So we reached a new low on that occasion. And Daniel Cummins received the worst of it. Daniel Cummins suffered major injury to his back. Major injury to his back. Spinal problems. Spinal problems. His medical team here recommended that he go to Trinidad because of the nature of the injury. They recommended for him a special chair and cautioned him that he could end up in a wheelchair. You understand where we're going with this? And fate? He could end up in a wheelchair by virtue of the injury occasioned by him being flung down the stairs of the Parliament building. And even to get the chair into Parliament, there was some furor. Something that would ease his pain. As an elected representative and a member of the country's legislature, there was a furor. Where you going with this chair? Why he had to be getting a special chair? He had to get a special chair because all of the members of the government side sat there and watch him being treated and manhandled and flung down the stairs. And nobody cared. Nobody cared. To this day, you have not heard the Prime Minister empathize. You have not heard him apologize. For as far as all of the members of government were concerned on that day, but if something had happened to one of them in terms of immediate death, would anybody have empathized then? We are a Christian society, you know. We are a Christian society. We are empathizing today with the Prime Minister and his wife and their family. Because as a Christian society, we have an understanding of the pain, the emotional trauma that people go through when they're sick, when their relatives are sick, when their loved ones are sick. Did anybody on the government side on that day bother themselves or their consciences as to what they witnessed the police do to the members of the opposition? Did they even say to their minions, you ought not to be laughing at this because somebody could have been killed? Did they sanction the police by saying you don't have to treat them so? They are, after all, elected representatives. This is not a brutish dictatorship. Did they? No. But Daniel Cummins has only, and it's interesting, Daniel Cummins has only in this past week informed us that he just completed a successful operation on the back in Trinidad and Tobago. And the opposition New Democratic Party called for prayers, first for the successful, hopeful that he would have a successful operation, and then giving thanks that it has been successful, but continuing to pray, because you know sometimes you can have problems even after a successful operation. So they have asked for him to be kept in their prayers of the people of this country. Just as we are asking for the people of this country to keep Eloise in our prayers, and then Ralph and the family in our prayers. We're not being facetious here. We are being honest and forthright about a situation that allows us to say with confidence, faith is an amazing thing. F-A-T-E. It is an amazing thing. But it is our faith, F-A-I-T-H, that commits us to empathize with Gonzales and Eloise, Ralph and Eloise at this time. Because operations are always a challenge. And everybody wants to wish for the best, pray for the best. In all seriousness, based on our Christian faith, F-A-I-T-H. But how many of them were encouraged to pray for Daniel Cummins? How many of them have been motivated to say publicly, we are culpable? Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. It is my fault, my most grievous fault. Because we could have put a stop to it. So on the one hand, Cummins has paid his price and is still paying it. And he suffered quietly. And he's still suffering. And he has had an operation because he too, had he not had the operation, was looking down the barrel of a gun in the sense that the doctors told him he would have to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Notice the same kind of prognosis. Eloise does not have this operation. She's likely to end up in a wheelchair. Cummins was told if you didn't have the operation, that too was going to be your lot. So faith, F-A-T-E, an incredible thing, has shown us Daniel Cummins flung down the stairs by police who could have done better. Who could have done better? What was the purpose for flinging him down the step? An elected representative. When we do that under normal circumstances with anybody we go to arrest, we talk about excessive force. You've seen it on your television screens all the time. In the whole Black Lives Matter movement. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, all of the whole lot. One case after another. Excessive force by the legitimate police authorities. Here, people who are apprehended and beaten and so on come to court and make a case about the use of excessive force by the police. And that is for crimes committed. Was it necessary for our police to use that kind of force against parliamentarians, knowing that you could have killed or you could have injured for life a member of parliament and elected representative of the people for simply standing up and ignoring the order of the Speaker of the House to take his seat? Make a silent protest in Parliament with people in the gallery, and that is the outcome. An injury that could have left him spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. Now the Prime Minister's wife has to undergo an operation where that could well have been her challenge as well, ending up spending the rest of her life in a wheelchair because of a condition relating to her spinal cord. Fate, F-A-T-E, is an incredible thing. But we want you to understand that F-A-I-T-H is even more incredible. We are told in the Christian faith there are three things that last: faith, hope, and love. Love, or as they call it, charity. But the greatest of these, the one that endures forever, is love. Not cockamamie love, not erotic love, agape. The love that places others above self. The love that comes with your Christian faith, F-A-I-T-H. Faith, F-A-T-E, is indeed an amazing thing. But we end this section by wishing Eloise well, by praying in all sincerity that she emerges from the surgery successfully, and that she is spared the pain and suffering that she must have been going through over the last several months. That even as we do so, pray for Daniel Cummins, that his pain too may be eased, and that the successful operation leads to a successful return to being hale and hearty, to being well, to being whole again. Today, dear friends, is the 13th of March, 2021. 42 years ago today, 42 years ago today, there was a revolution in Grenada led by the New Jewel Movement, NJM, New Jewel Movement. The Grenada Revolution, as it was called, took place in 1979 on the 13th of March. It took place at a time when there was turmoil, particularly in the Eastern Caribbean. There was turmoil of a sort in St. Lucia. There was turmoil in Dominica. There was turmoil in Grenada. And when the Grenada Revolution took place, Jimmy Carter was the president in the White House in the United States. And the US government under Jimmy Carter had a not so subtle diplomatic approach to a changing, challenging Eastern Caribbean. What did Carter do? He sent a very, very pretty white woman named Sally Shelton to be the ambassador to Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. At the time, in the Eastern Caribbean, Maurice Bishop was in charge of Grenada, Prime Minister. Louise was the Prime Minister in St. Lucia. And Seraphine was the Prime Minister in Dominica. Seraphine was the one who emerged as Prime Minister after they removed Patrick John from office in Dominica. So from the US standpoint, there was fear of the spread of Grenada's revolutionary ideas through the Odlum brothers in St. Lucia and their movement. Kenny Anthony was supportive of that group. Rosie Douglas in Dominica. All of them appeared to be left-leaning at the time. So once Grenada had had a revolution, the United States, looking at us being in their backyard, were bothered that the spread of these ideas, largely socialist in nature, threatened to reconfigure the geopolitics of the Caribbean. The Grenada Revolution at the time was led by Maurice Bishop and Bernard Cord. And Bishop and Cord constituted a rather interesting combination. A combination that may well have facilitated as much the destruction of the same Grenada Revolution as it did its formation. Note from the outset that Just Another Look makes the point that the revolution was led by both of these individuals. Yes, Maurice Bishop was the Prime Minister, but no one was in doubt that it was led by both of them. And there's good reason for us here at Just Another Look to insist upon phrasing the leadership of the revolution in these terms. Maurice Bishop and Bernard Cord were two middle-class individuals originally who chose different paths. Maurice went and did law, Bernard did economics and finance. But they ended up in the same place. Only later to return to their differences. Only to return to their differences. On the one hand, there was Maurice Bishop, charismatic. And that charisma allowed him to emerge as the official political leader of the New Jerome movement. Because they recognized that his charisma was going to carry the day. His charisma allowed him to become the official political leader of the New Jerome movement and of the revolution. And on the other hand, there was Bernard Cord, who emerged as the official political ideologue of the New Jerome movement and the chief advocate of the decision-making processes that eventually led to the revolution being realized on March 13, 1979. Ideologically, the difference between Maurice Bishop and Bernard Cord was as glaring as that between night and day. It was evident to anyone who took the time to engage in even the most casual analysis. And so, dear friends, some may very well hold the view that while Bernard Cord was an avowed Marxist-Leninist, committed to the application of a socialist agenda in Grenada, Maurice Bishop may well have had difficulty estranging himself from his quote-unquote bourgeois upbringing and apparent loyalties, even as he later emerged as co-leader of the Grenada Revolution. You see, as political leader, Maurice Bishop may well have found the making of hard decisions, particularly of a political nature, a most difficult challenge. And this apparent weakness in his leadership left much of the decision making to Bernard Cord, who was supported and admired ideologically by young, energetic, committed members of the New Jewel Movement's Central Committee. So analysts, in making their critical analyses, may suggest that the Grenada Revolution was an experiment for the Caribbean. Indeed it was. But it was also never going to be allowed to work for several reasons, as much internal as they were external. Unfortunately, the popularity of the so-called left in the Caribbean at the time, in almost every country, may well have been responsible for the broad wave of optimism that resulted from confusing what they would all have wanted to happen as opposed to what was realistically possible given the so-called development status of the country, of its people, and the geopolitics that surrounded the entire nation. You see, things have happened in waves in the Caribbean. So in the 1930s, we had the labor movement wave. There's a wave of consciousness that led many of the leaders to believe the time was right in the 1950s, late 1950s, 1958, to establish a regional entity, the West Indies Federation. And following the demise of that, there was a wave across the Caribbean towards independence in the 1960s, starting with Jamaica on the 8th of August, to be followed by Trinidad and Tobago on the 31st of August, and the list went on. In the 1970s, there was a wave across the region about black consciousness, black power. A wave, one island after the other. And in the 1980s, late 1970s, there was this wave of the rise of the left, very often in contradiction to the Black Power movement. and suggesting that the Black Power movement was essentially social and cultural and lacked the definitive scientific basis on which socialism, Marxism, Leninism was founded. And there was that wave. And so there was a recognition that, look, Michael Manley was talking socialism. And when he started talking socialism and took Jamaica into the non-aligned movement, his charisma and his capacity to gift of gab enabled him to become a major spokesperson in different parts of the world. And the Eastern Caribbean became part of that wave. But the inherent contradictions allowed us to see through that wave, because here was the same Michael Manley who once wanted to talk socialism, the same Michael Manley that wanted Walter Rodney out of Jamaica. Isn't it amazing? So you knew that he was a contradiction. You knew that. You see, dear friends, left-leaning individuals from across the Caribbean and its diaspora found their way to Grenada after the revolution. And they went there in the hope of being part of a new phase in the Caribbean's history. And it was reminiscent of C.L.R. James's return to Trinidad and Tobago in the 1950s to partner and support ideologically Eric Williams, in the hope that he would utilize his understanding of geopolitics to catapult Eric Williams and his People's National Movement into power in 1956. And what we saw in the movement towards Grenada was also reminiscent of the Fidel Castro-led Cuban Revolution on the 1st of January 1959. You see, dear friends, the Caribbean's left protagonists were all suddenly particularly eager to help make Grenada a sort of second Cuba in the Caribbean, especially given the fact that some years earlier they saw the demise of Cheddi Jagan and his initiative in Guyana to try to establish a sort of socialist agenda. And they saw, on the other hand, Michael Manley's flirtation with the left. Indeed, as they were to learn later on, Michael Manley's charisma was not enough to garner and retain the support of the left in Jamaica, because Rupert Lewis, Trevor Monroe, and others of the genuine left said that if Michael was prepared to go even slightly left, they would give him critical support. Michael Manley at the time was telling the world, telling all of Jamaica, forward on your feet, not on your knees. And when the US started to bite by ensuring that goods were in short supply in Jamaica, while he never uttered it publicly, Michael Manley may well have changed his thinking from forward on your feet, not on your knees, to please forward on your knees, if you please. The Grenada Revolution, dear friends, needed regional support. And so it entered into a sort of love-hate relationship with Forbes Burnham in Guyana. Because they knew Forbes Burnham was not genuinely socialist. Certainly not of the Marxist-Leninist mode that the left in the Caribbean would have wanted. That they saw and were prepared to give to Walter Rodney. That's where they were going. Walter Rodney, Clive Yolan Thomas, and others. But they needed that kind of recognition. So they entered into that love-hate relationship. And then found themselves betwixt and between when Walter Rodney was killed. And so here was a genuine left, Marxist-Leninist, killed in Guyana. And that they want to resist, to object, to vent their anger. But they still needed Forbes Burnham's support. Barbados' then Prime Minister Tom Adams, you may recall, allowed himself to become the mouthpiece of the US government and behaved almost like one of its agents, consistently challenging the reality of the Grenadian Revolution. So much so that in the major political spat between Barbados and Grenada, Maurice Bishop and the New Jewel regime labeled him not just Uncle Tom, but Uncle Tom, the Caribbean's yard fowl. Eugenia Charles, then Prime Minister of Dominica, appeared to speak out of both sides of her mouth. When it suited her, she aligned with Tom Adams and the United States in condemning Grenada not wanting to recognize the New Jewel movement as the government. But once they got before institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, they were happy that Bernard Codd was sitting next to them, competent, confident to take on the wiles of both the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, to get for small islands in the Caribbean their pound of flesh from those institutions. Once Ronald Reagan replaced Jimmy Carter in 1981 in the White House in the United States, things changed radically. And suddenly you had reputable United States journals, magazines, newspapers carrying features on Grenada, the Isle of Spice turned sour. They're building a submarine base in Lake Granitang, the bottom of Lake Granitang. One story after another. And then, of course, the international powerful media across the Caribbean had the identical editorial in 3 major newspapers across the region, including the Torchlight in Grenada. The battle was on. The US had drawn the battle lines. Ronald Reagan appeared intent on ensuring that the Grenada Revolution, as intended, would not survive. He led an offensive from different quarters, had a willing ally in Margaret Thatcher, who was Prime Minister in the United Kingdom. It was an offensive that eventually sowed the seeds of the demise of the Grenada Revolution. And in many respects, the demise of the Grenada revolutionary experiment can be summed up in much the same terms that Douglas Hall applied in his analysis of the primary cause for the failure of the West Indies Federation in 1962. The leaders of the Caribbean who take their victory at the polls, their support from the masses at the polls, as some sort of divine right to determine all decisions that are made thereafter for and on behalf of their people without necessarily consulting and engaging those very people. The Caribbean leaders may well have wanted change, but they never really engaged the people in that change. That too occurred internally in Grenada. That is the reason when the Grenada Revolution fell apart, the demonstrations of the masses showed the extent to which they were left out of the decision-making process. And they were able to point to the party and say, don't tell us about a central committee that made all the decisions. We don't know anything about that. And we would party to that. Like all of the other Caribbean islands, the leadership was pulling the people along the route, not allowing the people to be sufficiently engaged so that they would have had their hands on the reins. And perhaps we see that in St. Vincent and the Grenadines today. It is the pulling of Gonzales, pulling and pulling. Because like James Mitchell says, he too apparently believed they left me to lead, not to follow. And so they have never come to the understanding that leadership implicitly means engagement of those who you wish to take along with you. As fate, F-A-T-E, which we mentioned earlier, as fate would have it, the same issues that ended the Grenadian revolutionary experiment in 1983 nipped the Jamaican left movement in the bud. The same issues of maximum leadership, the same issues of differences within the ideological framework that were not of their origin, not of their making. The leadership never really had the full engagement of the people, and hence could never have had their unequivocal support for moving to the left in the way that Trevor Monroe and his group would have wanted to go. Interestingly, when Grenada had its revolution against the hereditary regime at the time of March 13, 1979, the New Jewel movement was overwhelmingly supported by the vast majority of the population. The people's disgust for Gary was greater than their understanding of and support for the socialist agenda that many in the Central Committee of the New Jewel movement had in their minds. They were not looking at their left-leaning agenda. They were looking at the fact that they were in opposition to Gary. And what they were putting on the table ostensibly looked a much better deal than what they were getting under Gary. Gary had showed himself to be a brutish dictator within the Caribbean. Maurice Bishop was the face of the New Jewel movement, not necessarily the face of the socialist agenda that Bernard Corn and many of the young politicians recruited by the party had espoused. And it is this latter fact that ultimately led to the demise of what we came to know as the Grenada Revolution. There was no forceful resistance to the change. The people wanted to see the back of Eric Gary. With the majority of Grenadians unschooled in socialism, many were pleased that the New Jewel government reinstated much of the pre-revolution constitution, leaving most of the pre-existing institutions intact. And they were riding a Trojan horse. People's Law number 1. Abandoned the Constitution. People's Law number 2 reinstated a significant proportion of the Constitution. And that was why there was always that dichotomy. Are you fish or fowl? Are you a socialist revolution, or are you still playing games with the fundamental principles of the Anglophone Constitution, its systems, organs, and processes? There's always that toing and froing. And interestingly, while many of the Caribbean leaders at the time, between 1979 and 1983, may have been more than a little uneasy sitting at CARICOM, OAS, IMF, UN, and World Bank meetings alongside the Grenadian delegation, they nonetheless relished the ease, competence, and confidence with which Grenadian delegations appeared fearless in competently addressing issues critical, not just to Grenada, not just to the Eastern Caribbean, but to the entire Caribbean. The Grenada Revolution also gave impetus to women and to youths in a manner that was not visible and integrated into the culture of the rest of the Caribbean. Not in that way. They facilitate women and young people taking on roles of immense importance in the processes of governance. And so Grenada, under the revolution, in just 4 years, gave the country an international image that became the envy of many larger and more developed nations around the world, not just the Caribbean, around the world. And yet nobody dared to call themselves world boss. In many respects, therefore, dear friends, Grenada was an anomaly in terms of a revolutionary government taking over a former colonial territory, especially one that was a British colony. And the anomaly manifested itself all the more when, on the one hand, the government wanted to do revolutionary things in several areas which could not go with the constitution under which they wanted to operate. That pulling and tugging created a number of issues. For example, While the revolutionary government wanted, for example, to dismiss persons from the public service on grounds of them being quote-unquote counter-revolutionary, acting in what the revolutionary government thought was inimical to its own interests. The SRNO governing public servants does not have such a concept of counter-revolution, as the Grenada government found out. When the minister told a permanent secretary to dismiss the principal of the Grenada Boys Secondary School, Mr. McIntyre, and then found that they had to pay him through to his retirement age because they were operating as fish and fowl at the same time. The existing public service regulations did not permit the classification. Perhaps the most important anomaly was evident at the end of the Grenada Revolution, because you had a very interesting situation. On the one hand, even Caribbean governments, and all of them were arguing Maurice Bishop was not a legitimate prime minister because he was not duly elected. He took control of a government by force. Therefore, he ought not to be recognized in Caribbean circles as a prime minister. Yet when he was killed, the same Caribbean governments were saying, take legal action against the perpetrators of the crime because they kill a prime minister. Well, was he or was he not a prime minister? The same people who said he could not be a prime minister because of the way he got into government were the same ones saying he was killed as a prime minister and they must be charged for killing a prime minister. That situation, that anomaly, remains today one of the most interesting cases in discussing Caribbean law, Caribbean jurisprudence. Was he or was he not a prime minister at the time of his death? Transitioning to the norm in the politics of the region, many of them became baptized into Christianity. Those who were once saying that they espoused scientific socialism in which there was no basis and no room for Christianity. Many of them readily espoused Christianity. And in hindsight, many of them did it in order to become acceptable by the masses, by the electorate, and eventually to take control of their respective societies. Like chameleons, like cocoa bears, they changed their ways and modified their public ideological coloration in order to gain acceptability by the electorate. So it's not surprising that in some societies you know only too well, the scientific socialists, the Marxist-Leninists, took those ideologies and swept them under the carpet and rebranded themselves as Christians, eventually convincing the unsuspecting electorate that all of those old style thinking was now behind them, and you can accept me as I am. And it is the reason why some of those who eventually access power kept at bay, at arm's length, more than arm's length, those who were once strong advocates of scientific socialism and the ideology of Marxism-Leninism. They've kept them at arm's length. And so you ask why, for example, the one-time leader of the UPM in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Rennick Rhodes, why has he been kept so much at arm's length? Not even the Banana Growers Association was good enough for him to be given to lead after the changeover here in 2001. Not even that. And everybody knew that he had wind farm. The banana farmers of the Windward Islands and those in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in a strong bargaining position. But he was not good enough and has never been seen as good enough. Ask Renwick. What happened with the Grand Beach Accord? What was his role? And he and Cecil Ryan and others were in the odd thing, thinking perhaps that we could help. And the odd thing boasted that this is an organization we are forming that is here to stay. It will stay the test of time, regardless of what party is in power. That was until the ULP got into power. From the time they came back from the Grand Beach Accord, nobody heard about the odd thing. It was marginalized and it fell into lack of recognition. Nobody knows what happened to it. Most Vincentians don't even remember of its existence or of its membership. That typifies what has happened to the left in the Caribbean. That's why we here, Just Another Look, refer to them as the ruminants of the left, otherwise known as the leftovers. The ideology, nobody wants to hear about it. They once ensconced themselves in non-governmental organizations to earn a living for the most part. Some have shown themselves eager to do whatever it takes to give somebody, even if they have changed the coloration of their politics, half a loaf is better than no bread at all. But they're not even getting half a loaf. If you practice the analysis, you see the emergence of a sort of benevolent type of dictatorship. A type that suggests we are helping you, poor people. Don't you see that? We are helping you. Everything we're doing for you. And every time anybody challenges that, they then receive the kind of treatment that you get. Pulling down your name, the dishonest, the unschooled, the untutored, the possessive of a sort of learned helplessness, etc., etc. That's why, even now, as Binsa tries to show itself to be a union of some sort for the van drivers, you see the divide and rule inside there. You see the attempts at dividing and ruling the labor movement in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to a point where it has been totally emasculated. Many of them don't fight for anything anymore. They wait. Papa will eventually give us what he thinks is our due, and he will keep us alive. That's what the situation has become. So the failure of the Grenadian Revolution did not only fail Grenadians, it did not only fail the left movement in the region, it failed the entire region, the entire Caribbean. It set us back, just as the failure of the Federation set us back. We are back to crabs in a barrel, mumbling that we are independent, that walking around the world begging for handouts. Begging for handouts. You, dear listeners, take the plunge and engage in a critical analysis of global politics. And ask yourself why it is the current ruling regime continues to trumpet its love for Taiwan versus China. Ask yourself if it is a matter or if it isn't a matter of pure political expediency, of pure political mamagism. And that all we do is to continue to make the masses believe that we are working in their collective best interests. And as happened in the most recent elections, when you lose the majority of the electorate, you find a way to singing a song that is vastly different from when you lost the government or when you failed to win the government in 1998 but had the majority of the electorate. You had one position as to how that should have played out in terms of governance of the country. And because you weren't getting that, it then gave a commitment to make the country ungovernable. That's how much you love the country. You were prepared to destroy it, make it ungovernable, because you did not win the elections, even though you had won the popular vote. But when the opposition wins the popular vote in 2020, your behavior in Parliament reflects a different strategy. There's always the capacity to put a political spin on things and to show at the end of the day that you could continue to use words to confuffle the minds of the electorate. We are ever reminded, therefore, that the Grenada Revolution's failure failed the entire Caribbean. A Caribbean that was hopeful that something good, something uniquely Caribbean could have emerged from it. This was the initial appeal of Grenada. Many thought it was an opportunity for something good, something genuinely Caribbean to emerge from it. And people were so hopeful that many Caribbean academics and many independent-minded people wanted to be of assistance. They wanted to be part of shaping a new Caribbean. All of that dissipated with the demise of the Grenada Revolution in 1983. We are ever reminded, dear friends, of the Grenada Revolution. We are ever reminded of the role that it once promised to play in giving Caribbean people hope, of making sense of the concept of independence. If only for an all too brief moment in time. Enough said. But you know, friends, even as we remind ourselves of what happened 42 years ago, we end where we started. Fate, F-A-T-E, is an incredible thing. Because fate, F-A-T-E, is what led to us remembering each week the disappearance of J8VAX 5,181 days ago. J8VAX, piloted by Dominic Gonzalez, disappeared with Suresh Lakra, with Rashid Ibrahim on board. All he did was ask for a ride up because the flight that he was waiting on, he should have come earlier, hadn't reached yet. And he knew that his mother, Nisha Branco, was waiting at the airport for him. A plane disappeared. And nobody knew other than Nisha Branca for a very long time. To call the owners of the company, SVG Air, you're talking foolishness, we ain't missing no plane. The people in the control tower, nobody had anything written down. And at some point, somebody comes back and says, well, the plane will land. Look outside and say, yeah. It's out there, and you put a time that you thought it landed. Not a time that you actually saw it land. You put down what should have been the original flight that he was supposed to be on. That's how things took place around the time that it disappeared on Sunday, the 19th of November 2006. It is fate, F-A-T-E, that has us being mindful that 3,871 days ago, another SVG aircraft, J8SXY, piloted by Suresh Lakra, they call him out from home, he was not working that day, to go to Kanoan for a mercy mission, disappeared without a trace on Thursday, the 5th of August, 2010. Fate has us dealing with it. It is that same fate, F-A-T-E, that has us every week reminding you that on the 19th of September 2008, Patricia Bowman, on a rainy morning, on her way to work, was crushed in her car, crushed to death in her car. When her body was eventually found in the car, which at the time was nearly flat like a biscuit, they saw that she had leaned over, recognizing the debris was coming down, and died crushed in that position. And nobody since 2008, 19th of September, had been alleged or held responsible for that. The war, like it didn't have an owner. We can't even make a case in a situation like that. But we could tell people all kind of things about laws. But we can't make a case like that. We tell Bowman, if you want to make a case, you tell her husband Alva, if you want to make a case, you make a case. But you, the government, ain't making no case on your behalf, on behalf of your dead wife. That's what we did. And so we sit down here. You know, sometimes you're in court. There are so many lawyers looking for work. When somebody is hauled before the court, the magistrate say, you have a defense, you have a lawyer? Somebody put up their hand. Yeah, I'll be the lawyer. Yeah? Nobody convincing anybody to put up their hand to come to Alban Bowman's assistance. That's our law, fraternity. That's the law of fraternity. You had more lawyers putting up their hands. When a lawyer, Williams, emptied a gun on his girlfriend, a nurse, on a Juve morning in front of police headquarters where she was coming out after having gone to make a complaint against him. You had more lawyers putting up their hands, coming to his assistance. You didn't see any hands go up to come to the assistance of Alban Bowman, whose wife, Patricia Bowman, was crushed to death on her way to work, crushed to death in her car by somebody's wall that collapsed on the 19th of September 2008. That is the contradictory situation in which we live in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That is what we have to critically analyze, because that is who we have become as a people. That is the society that we have become. We pray God that we can change. We pray God on this 13th day of March 2021 that He may come into the hearts of Vincentians and show us His way. Take control of our lives and let us be the Christians you want us to be. Enough said. You have been listening, dear friends, to another edition of Nice Radio's Callaloo presentation, Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative, and yes, certainly controversial, socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio. First aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m. with repeat broadcasts on Sundays at 9 p.m. But remember, you can catch us on the World Wide Web. www.niceradio.info. You can always catch us on Facebook and YouTube. I am, of course, Keith Joseph.
Looking for a place to relax with natural cool breeze and friendly surroundings? Then check the Bay Hill Tree Bar, located at Bay Hill Cane Garden. We have everything a bar will have. We also sell Shell 20-pound cooking gas at the Bay Hill Tree Bar.
www.bayhillnews.net is the parent body of Bay Hill News Network. We do Facebook Live for church service, funeral service, lecture, sporting activity. For more, contact at bayhillnewsnetwork@gmail.com or call 1784-529-8340.
Great news! Spectra Plus is now rolling out internet and TV services in St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Yes, better service and better prices from the new and improved Spectra Plus. Spectra Plus TV plans for $59.99 per month, VAT included. Adult TV 3 channels plus $29.99. For more information, call 1784-534-2551 or 1784-532-2501. Fast, reliable broadband and television services for your home or business. Spectra Plus TV, internet, better.
Now with ice-cold local juices to go with our rich and tasty authentic Vincentian meals made affordable, it's the award-winning Phoenix Kitchen, open 7 days with extended hours on Friday and Saturday. Juices included Marby, lemon lime, passion fruit, bell apple, golden apple, cherry, mango, Marby, linseed, carrot, beetroot, fruit punch, and sea moss. For further information, call 455-1280. That's right, a bigger meal awaits you now with fresh, cold local juices. Phoenix Kitchen. Let the phoenix arise in you.
Bay Hill News Network is an internet radio. We are affiliate with Fun City Radio USA, Cancardi Radio, and Success Radio Canada and Blaze Nation Media Group. You can find Bay Hill News Network at www.bayhillnews.net.
Ship your barrels and household effects to St. Vincent and the Grenadines with SVG Direct. Jumbo barrels, $70, medium, $60, and small, $50. We ship anything, name it, we ship it. Vehicles and more. Local agent, Adams Customs and Shipping Agency, 3rd floor, Baines Building, Kingstown, SVG. Telephone 1784-458-1328. In Canada, contact Michael 647-569-3285. Jumbie 647-657-7362. Remember, it's free pickup at your convenience, 7 days per week, anywhere in the Greater Toronto area with SVG Direct. Looking for a place to relax with natural cool breeze and friendly surroundings? Then check the Bay Hill Tree Bar, located at Bay Hill Cane Garden. We have everything a bar will have. We also sell Shell 20 pounds cooking gas.